So I just saw Inside Out 2. Let's talk about it. Welcome to the city of Charlotte. I live in New Orleans, but I will be in Charlotte for the next month, which is why the setting looks a little bit different. But let's talk about Inside Out 2. Let's talk about our director for a hot second. So Kelsey Mann is our director. This is technically his feature film directorial debut. He did write and direct a short prior to this, right after Monsters University, but this is his first feature film directorial debut. And what an undertaking. This is not his first roundabout or first rodeo with Pixar. He's been working with Pixar since Monsters University, so since 2013. Particularly on the creative side of it, so story supervisor, he helped to co-write one of the stories for a Pixar film. I believe it was The Good Dinosaur. He helped co-write the story, which was kind of the foundation for that movie. Did story supervisor for Monsters University, The Good Dinosaur, Onward, and then he was part of the creative team for Luca, Turning Red, Lightyear, Elemental, and now he has been tasked with the huge undertaking of directing a Pixar movie, Inside Out 2. So this is a sequel to the 2015 film. Much of our same emotion cast is returning. So we have Amy Poehler, Phyllis Smith, Lewis Black, Tony Hale, Liza Lapira, and we're adding in Ayo Edebiri, Adele Exarchopoulos, and Maya Hawke. So in the last movie, Riley was 11 years old. She had just moved from Minnesota to San Francisco with her parents. And we were getting to know Riley via the inside of her mind with these 5 emotions: joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger. Fast forward 2 years later, and Riley is now 13 years of age. She's getting ready to go into high school, just graduated middle school, and she is an ice hockey player. She has 2 really close friends, Grace and Bree, and they're all 3 of them are hockey players. They make a cute little trio. But now she's entering puberty and we have new emotions. We have boredom, embarrassment, envy, and anxiety. I will say this, the movie is good. It doesn't quite live up to the first one, but it's good. I probably laughed harder this time around, and I think it's because it's aged a bit. We're growing up with Riley. In a way, I feel like they could do this the way they did with Harry Potter. We got to grow with Harry. We could grow with Riley. They could keep these movies going for a while. The problem is Pixar, Disney really likes to, within this realm of Disney, likes to stick to family-friendly, things. And as Riley grows, she's going to become less family-friendly. Like, that's just the nature of it all. But I think there's a smart little idea in this, in that as Riley grows, we can grow with her, and watching the changing of emotions, because before she had her very basic emotions, joy, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and now we have these new emotions that come with puberty. And how do we balance these old emotions with these new emotions? Well, what happens when she really gets into adolescence and goes into adulthood? I think there's potential to really keep this going, because this audience, the initial audience, was little kids, right? So kids between the ages of like 7 and 12. Well, now that audience, we're 9 years later, is much older. I think there's an opportunity for Disney to really just hang on to that audience and grow Riley with them. But the ways in which this movie doesn't quite live up to the first one, there was so much world building, literally world building in that first movie. And I think that's one of the things that made it so cool, was to see the human brain explained in ways that just made sense. Taking the complexities of the brain and seeing how everything can kind of work together, just simplifying it, really dumbing it down and making it plain. So much of the world building in, that first movie is what made it so special. This movie, there really isn't much world building. There are a couple of news pockets within this world. We have belief system, sarcasm, literally a chasm, sarcasm. I love the ironic humor in it all. And because we don't have any of this world building, we're really relying on these characters to push and move this plot along, to really build up the story. So I feel like this has some of the pitfalls of a sequel, in that, the first movie gave us so much. What else could this possibly give us? Now Riley's 13 years old. She's in puberty. We have these new emotions, and just trying to figure out how this all balances together. One of the things I noticed going into this sequel is that it kind of rushes into it very quickly, almost like we're just hopping onto a moving train. And I said this in my TikTok, but like I love that sometimes I enjoy when we're stepping into movie and it feels like the plot is already in motion and we're just almost stepping into it. It's like we're late to the party, but we have to play catch up. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. I didn't quite like the way that played out in this movie, but I wouldn't say that was a distracting thing or bad thing. I'm just a nerd. So the story is much simpler. The plot is not as dense. The characters are a little more woo than they were the last time, which I think the story being simpler and not as dense is a bit of a tragedy. Because again, that initial audience is older, and I felt like they could have benefited from a more dense plot. The core part of the plot for this movie is the development of Riley's sense of self. Now that she's 13 years old, she's becoming a young woman, she's starting to figure out who she is, her identity. That's what this really is about, just the development of one's identity through puberty. That's the time of our lives, that natural physical development, that natural transition from childhood to adulthood, where we start to become who we are. We start to figure out who we are. We start to become a little more autonomous and we become more independent. We start to be less of our parents and more of ourselves. And that is a very difficult journey. And I love the way this movie navigates it. It takes it very seriously, but also makes it look fun. So I know a lot of parents are probably like, oh my God, puberty, but we're not talking about boys. Well, except for, her having a crush on a fictional character, which I feel like a lot of us older women can relate to as well, but we're not going to go there. So there's no real talk about boys or sex. So none of that's here. It's just about those emotional changes where one day everything's cool and copacetic and the next day you're crying for no reason and you don't know why and you're overly emotional. And so I love how there's this battle within her own mind between these emotions that have always been there and made sense and these new emotions she has to navigate, because anxiety comes into this, into headquarters and decides that she knows what's best for Riley and that she has to, take over and take control, and that, these old emotions, they're useless. And I love kind of the ironic humor in here because you have, these sarcasm, and then you have where they're stuffed into a bottle and it's like these emotions are bottled up. They're suppressed emotions. So a lot of ironic humor in this that I think may or may not go over little kids' heads, but this is the magic of Disney, and this is what they do so well, is they're able to take a children's concept, a children's movie, and make it wildly accessible to all generations. So there's parts of this movie that children are absolutely going to love. Goofy, slapstick kind of humor, a lot of fun little antics. I think a good chunk of the puberty stuff, if you have younger kids, it's going to go right over their head. But if you have an adolescent, I think a lot of this they're going to find very relatable. And if you're an adult, I think you're going to find this very relatable because we've been through it. We've been there. This was our journey as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of ourselves in Riley. And I think that's what also makes this whole Inside Out thing so special, is that it's very self-reflective. It's a mirror. We're often able to see ourselves in Riley as she grows, which is why I think like wasted opportunity from Disney if they don't grow Riley. Ayo Adebri. Now, I don't know much about voice acting and what's good and what's not, what makes a good voice actor and what doesn't. But Ayo Adebri, I feel like is finding a balance in her career. She's finding a talent for it because she was in, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Well, one of the Spider-Verses. I don't know which one. And then she was in the most recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. And now she's in this. So I think there is potential for her to, find an interesting balance in her career with voice acting. Maya Hawke as Anxiety is wonderful, very interesting. I'm trying to figure out, I want to understand the creative decision behind making Anxiety orange. There's also a little cameo, so to speak, from June Squibb. June Squibb, I believe she was in Young Sheldon. I've never watched the series, but I've heard she's in it. She was also in a movie most recently. I saw it a couple of days ago called Thelma. And she is an emotion, but Riley's not quite ready for her yet. She's not old enough for this emotion. Nostalgia. Hilarious. If I had to sum it up, overall, it's by itself, it's fantastic. when you compare it to the first movie, it's just okay. It doesn't quite live up to it. The story is, I think if we're growing up with Riley, I feel like the story is just too simple and not dense enough, especially if you're, reaching out to that original audience that has grown 9 years. I feel like they could have handled something denser and thicker. But like I said, by itself, it's wonderful. It's fantastic. When you compare it to the first movie, it's just okay. It doesn't quite live up to it. I don't think you could ever top something like that. What Inside Out did was just, it was amazing. It was different. It was unique. And, you can't do unique and different twice. You just can't. But speaking of just the animation in general, I mean, again, animation is also something I can't speak too much on. I watch animated movies, but in terms of critiquing what's good and what's not, I am not an art person at all. So it's gorgeous. The movie is beautiful, colorful, interesting, story design and production design. The way we're navigating Riley's brain is not as intricate as it was in the last movie, which kind of sad, but it is what it is. I think there is potential for an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature, but we'll have to see what the rest of the year has to offer. But I definitely think because the movie is just stunning, it's gorgeous, it's Pixar, it's almost expected at this point that Pixar is going to get some kind of nomination somewhere. But I think there's potential. I think there's definite potential for an Academy Award. We'll just have to see what this year has to offer. Luckily for everyone, because of the strike, so much was pushed back. Everybody has a fighting chance. But that's it. That's all I've got for Inside Out 2. If you see it this weekend, let me know what you thought. If you haven't gotten your ticket, go ahead and get it. I saw it yesterday, on a Thursday at 3 p.m., and it was a full theater. So plan ahead, plan accordingly. But when you see it, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, if you're a parent and you have questions, please ask them. I want to help you make the best decision for your family, because I know being a parent and wanting to find quality, appropriate entertainment for your children can be difficult. So let me be a resource. Please ask me questions. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys are wonderful, and I'll see you next time.